Welcome everyone. We, as part of the Stanford Scholar Initiative, present to you the paper Tightly CCA-Secure Encryption Without Pairings by Roman Gay, Dennis Hofheinz, Heike Kills, and Hotek V. So let's first talk about public key encryption or PKE. You probably use it every time you log onto your mail server or open your Facebook page. All secure communications that are made possible by HTTPS or SSH use PKE underneath. As the diagram shows, in this a user Bob wants to send a message to another user Alice. He uses her public key to encrypt the message, and Alice in turn, on getting the ciphertext, uses her private key to decrypt the message. A very desirable property of encryption schemes is that it remains secure from all kinds of adversaries. A well-secure encryption algorithm thus needs to be resistant to chosen plaintext or CP attacks as well as chosen ciphertext or CCA attacks. In chosen plaintext or CP attack model, the idea is that the adversary has the power to get encryptions of his chosen plaintext. This can be either by getting access to a public key or access to an encryption oracle, as the figure shows. On the other hand, in chosen ciphertext or CC attack model, the adversary not only gets access to encryption oracle, but also a decryption oracle. He can query the decryption oracle with his chosen ciphertext, and it would return him the corresponding plaintext. All in all, in CCA security, the adversary is also given the power to decrypt in addition to the power to encrypt. Thus, CCA security is a stronger form of security and is the most desirable from any other encryption scheme. In order to be satisfied that an encryption scheme like E is secure, we need to theoretically prove the security of such scheme. In order to do this, we reduce the security of the scheme to a hard problem, say P. This reduction says that if an attacker A were to break the encryption scheme E, we could use that attacker to construct another attacker B who can break the hard problem P. But since the problem P is hard, this is quite unlikely. Now, another desirable behavior of any encryption scheme is that this reduction to the hard problem be tight. What this means is that if suppose the attacker A breaks the encryption scheme with success probability alpha and in time t1, and using that we construct attacker B that breaks the hard problem P with success probability beta in time t2, then for tight reduction we must have that alpha approximately equals beta and t1 approximately equals t2. The aim of the research community is to develop PKEs that are correct and as secure and efficient as possible. This is conveyed by the diagram where we have three axes that represent the three qualities we strive for: security, tighter reduction, and weaker assumption. The best security one can hope for is CCA security. In addition, one strives to have a PKE that is based on a weak assumption, meaning that if the PKE is broken by an adversary, we would be able to solve a very hard problem. To make schemes that are more efficient, one can hope for a PKE that has a tight security reduction. Now, let's analyze the current state of this problem. PKE schemes that are CCA secure and have a tight security reduction have been developed. However, they are based on pairings and rely on stronger assumptions than the DDH assumption. In addition, CCA secure PKE schemes that are based on DDH have also been made, but they have a large security loss and do not have a tight security reduction. Let us now see why this problem is hard to solve. The CCA-secure PKEs that have been made previously from DDH assumption lead to a large security loss. Decreasing the security loss to get a tight reduction while also maintaining CCA security is a challenging process. Also, since a series of works have tried to do this for a long time using pairings had begun to be considered a standard practice in this field. Standardization of a technique makes it difficult to think about more efficient and advanced approaches.
Let us now talk about the primary research question addressed by this paper. This paper addresses the open question as to whether it is possible to construct CCA secure PKE having a tight security reduction from the DDH assumption. Let us now talk about the research carried out in this paper. This paper proposes a public key encryption scheme that is CCA secure and whose security reduction is tight. It does this avoiding the use of pairings and instead reducing the problem to the DDH assumption as explained earlier. Here we will see what were some of the earlier works carried out in this area. In 2003, Kramer and Shu published the first PKE scheme that was CCA-Secure and was based on DDH. However, it had a large security loss with a ciphertext overhead of 3. Subsequently, in 2004, Kurosawa and Desmet improved the ciphertext overhead to 2, but the scheme still had a large security loss. In 2012, Hofheinz and Jagger and a series of follow-up works were able to get a tight security loss but had to resort to strong pairing-related assumptions in order to do this. Finally, in 2016, this paper proposes a new PKE scheme that does away with pairing-related assumptions and instead is able to get tight security reduction directly from the DDH assumption. Let us now see the approach the authors took to construct this scheme. The authors first start with a key encapsulation mechanism or KEM, which is based on the Kramer-Shrew PKE and is also tag-based. There are some subtle points to note about this scheme. Firstly, the scheme is a KEM. A key encapsulation mechanism or KEM is a scheme that can be used to get a public key encryption. Secondly, it is based on a weaker form of security than CCA and is called the plaintext check attack or PCA security. In PCA security, the attacker doesn't get access to a decryption oracle, but instead can query a PCA oracle with a plaintext and ciphertext pair to see if the ciphertext decrypts to the plaintext. Since the attacker doesn't have access to a decryption oracle, this is strictly weaker than CCA security. This scheme is thus PCA secure based on DDH assumption but non-tight. Next, the authors use a paradigm called the randomized now-Reingold paradigm to decrease the security loss and to get a KEM which has a tight security reduction. Note that this scheme has now become tight, which is what we want from the final scheme. Finally, they use collision-resistant hash functions and authenticated encryption to this tag-based KEM to get a public key encryption scheme and to increase the security from PCA to CCA, thus achieving a new PKE that is CCA secure based on DDH and has a tight security reduction. Let's finally come back to the research questions we saw earlier. The paper thus affirmatively settles the open problem by achieving a tight CCA secure PKE based on the DDH assumption. To conclude, the paper proposes a new public key encryption scheme that is secure in the strongest model of CCA security. It is comparatively more efficient than previous PKEs since it has a tight security reduction, which means that real-world implementations would require smaller parameters to be used. The results thus obtained show that tighter security doesn't necessarily come at the cost of stronger assumptions. The paper hence affirmatively settles the open problem of whether tight CCA secure PKEs can be constructed from the DDH assumption.